All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. Mr. McGowan, please read Floor Amendment 162.
Amendment 162 to House Bill 1284 by Senator Stedman, amend the local government
Senator
energy.
Stedman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L162. Well, this is going to start to get a little more interesting, colleagues. What this amendment does is it strikes the provisions in the licensing sections about hours of operation, and instead adds a paragraph to the ability of the local licensing authority to place restrictions in their local license concerning hours of operation. Right now, the bill says, I believe, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. as a matter of state statute. And as far as I'm concerned, we need to be very careful in how we go about regulating this industry, how much we dictate in state statute and how much we leave to local control. The whole model here is of a state licensing authority that delegates a significant amount of power and discretion to local licensing authorities. Hours of operation should be a decision made by a local licensing authority. We shouldn't inscribe hours of the day into state statute. Let the local licensing authorities decide what is right for their communities. This bill takes a very strong local control approach. Senator Romer, I've heard you describe it as a local control bill. And as far as I'm concerned, this is one of those snivelly little details that shouldn't be in state statute and should be left to local control.
Senator Romer.
Thank you, members. And my concern with this is effectively if you allow different cities to have different times of business, what kids will do is they'll effectively, and let's admit that not everybody in this process who has a license now is chronically ill. We know there are some young people who are already in this process, as much as we might hope that that's not the case, and hopefully Senate Bill 109 will eliminate that. But Senator Stedman, I have a grave concern that kids are basically going to be shopping for where and who stays open the latest. We have set out a statewide standard to avoid that, and I strenuously ask the body to reject this amendment. This is something of a matter of statewide concern. We had a common set of standards. And CML did not push this, so don't treat this. I can see him out in the lobby. This is not a CML. They cannot pretend this. This is a Stedman amendment, not CML. Say no.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, that's true. My name is on the amendment, not any of the interest groups out in the lobby. No one asked me to do this. This was me reading the bill and seeing what sorts of detail we put in statute versus what we allow to local discretion. And again, I think things like I support the pieces in here about varying the restrictions around proximity to various facilities. I think local licensing authorities should be able to decide best what's going to work in their community. Senator Romer, I understand your concern for the children, but I think the local licensing authority is in a better position to determine what is best for the patients in their community. And for that reason, I think this is appropriate. I don't think this means that you're going to have 24-hour operation of dispensaries happening in any of the communities that decide to offer local licensing. I just think it's a local decision and one we shouldn't decide here in Denver.
Senator Foster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like the Stedman amendment. It's not a killer on this really good work that you've done. And I think that local governments can really determine, and it doesn't need to be in statute, I totally agree. They will be able to have that flexibility. If 9 to 9 works well, that's good. If they need to change the hours, they don't have to go back. They don't have to come back to the state to clarify it in a different bill. I think it's common sense here. I think it's reasonable, and I support it.
Senator Romer and then Senator Spence.
I'll let pass Senator Spence first.
Senator Spence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I absolutely oppose this amendment as well. You know, members, when we're trying to set those guardrails and trying to get the industry regulated right out of the chute, we need to be maybe more restrictive than we would be on an industry that was already established. So I agree with Senator Romer. This is an absolutely no vote.
Senator Romer.
Thank you. And we met with both the big and the little dispensaries over the weekend. We talked with people. Nobody from the dispensary community came and asked me to change this. This is Senator Stedman's own issue, and I really would argue This bill has been, and frankly, I would ask Senator Stedman to do what I did, which is to go out with a vice squad in Denver at night. And I'll tell you, it's not, there's plenty of time during the day for people to get medicine before the hours, and I just don't think this is a good idea. And I think this is exactly the kind of compromises we made with law enforcement, and now we're going down a slippery slope that I asked Senator Stedman not to do. I asked Senator Stedman not to put the compromise of this bill at jeopardy. He did not tell me about this amendment. I would ask you to reject it. There's a compromise we made with law enforcement. I'd ask you strenuously to stick with the deal we made with law enforcement on the bill.
Senator Stedman? Senator Foster?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have ridden with police in Denver for many years, and I respect where you're coming from, Senator Romer and Senator Spence. You've done a noble job. CML is not asking me to push this, to deny it, to reject it, whatever, to support it. It's just common sense. Let the cities, let the counties determine what time these dispensaries can be open or not. I just think it's common sense. I am supporting, it's hard enough for me to support the police model and of this particular bill. I'm doing that. But I don't think that we need to determine at a state level what time these shops are open. We don't do it for Walgreens. We don't do it for, well, the liquor stores now have their own plan, whatever. I just think that we just don't need to be there. I like the common sense approach to Senator Stedman's amendment, and I will support that.
Further discussion? Senator Heath?
Thank you, Madam President. Didn't want to get fined.
Well,
just
you
last
just
night,
did.
I was reading the paper this morning, and
Senator Heath, you just
Madam-
did.
Madam Chair, can't win for losing. Thank you. I got to remember what I was up here to do now. Last night, the Boulder City Council passed on second. They're going back to third, and one of the things they passed was the time. I think they said they were going to leave them open until 9 p.m. It seems to me, I like the bill. I like where we're trying to go, but this one, I just don't see where we need to put time into this statute, because every community can deal with this differently. So I would support Senator Stedman's amendment.
Senator Stedman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to wrap up, I've been asked to reiterate what the amendment does. This amendment strikes from the proposed statutory language in the bill restrictions on hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And it relocates language into the local licensing authority section, that one of the things the local licensing authority has the power to do is place reasonable restrictions on hours of operation, taking it out of state statute and giving it to local governments, local licensing authorities as a matter of local control. Senator Heath just told you that in one of his cities, in his district, the local city council has made a decision that would be preempted and overturned by what's in this bill. They decided that 9 p.m. is a reasonable time restriction for their community. I don't know why we feel the need to dictate that in state statute here from the Capitol in Denver. Let the local licensing authorities decide what sorts of local hours of operation make most sense in their community.
Senator Spence?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's just turn this around and say a community would decide that a dispensary or a center needed only to be open from, say, 2 in the afternoon until 5 or 6. I suppose they can, but I also think that doesn't treat fairly the medical patients that really need access to a reasonable time frame in order to get their product, in order to get their relief. And I think it cuts both ways. I think we've got to think about what's fair to the legitimate patients who are not out shopping for marijuana at 10 and 11 and 12 o'clock at night. The legitimate patients will be probably have their product before 8 o'clock in the evening. So I think these time restrictions are quite reasonable to protect the right of a patient to get their product when they need it, not limited to, say, noon to 4 or in the afternoon or whatever. Cuts both ways, Senator Stedman.
Senator Stedman.
Well, I would just respond, Senator Spence, that actually under